In the constantly changing world of fundability, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Get Fundable podcast with your host, Merill Chandler.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Merill Chandler, your host of the Get Fundable podcast. So this episode, I was training my team members, and we at Credit Sense, and the advisors had these guys are amazing when it comes to coaching individuals on how to not just become fundable, but then how to leverage that fundability in taking down credit lines, business loans, etc. And so I basically pulled out one of the training videos because we brought on a new advisor, and I got to tell you, this thing was amazing. I forgot how amazing it was. Now, just because if it's true, it's not bragging. This was a presentation about the degradation of an account, right? For how a trade line, a revolving account, installment loan, and the process it goes through to become negative, and what are the ramifications and some of the things that end up on your credit profile as a result of this downgrading of the account from paid as agreed to 30, 60, 90 charge off, etc. I decided that I'm going to share it with you, and this was it was a blast. So when we come back, we're going to drop right into this training video about how these accounts show up on your profile and what are the rules of engagement. What's FICO versus reporting? Remember, for all of you boot campers out there, my funding hackers, you know there's a difference between credit reporting and credit scoring. We go through all that in looking at different accounts. So when I get back, you're going to love this. I'll see you in just a moment.
Foremost, we're going to talk about credit accounts. Now, credit accounts are both revolving accounts and installment loans. So everything we're talking about today is about that trade line experience. You know, what the credit account is, doesn't matter, revolving and installment. And so let's take a look at kind of the big picture here. In an account life cycle, there is an internal and an external to the creditor. And so in the internal experience, when an account is with or resides with the creditor, with the lender, then these are the different statuses. These are the different conditions that the account can be in. So we're going to go through each one of these in detail, but for all of you with good credit, you know as well as I do, current or paid as agreed, never late. That's our objective. That's what we want. But for some of us, where we had a late pay in the past, it'll say current was late. So that is a negative indicator that shows that while it's current now, it has had a derogatory or negative indicator in the past. And then there's currently late, 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, and 180 days. That's up to 6 months. And we'll explore some of those and why they're different at different times. Then there's an in-house collection status where you are in collections, but it's not outside. And then finally, the worst case scenario for an account status inside of the lender, inside of the creditor, is the charge-off. After the charge-off, it goes to, or it can go to third-party collections, and if that collection company refers it to an in-house or out-house attorney, then it can end up as a judgment or a public record. So now, current paid as agreed is the most important designation. It's the most high yield point designation. But what we need to understand is that FICO measures paid as agreed as a scoring function, Whereas the credit bureaus just say that it's current, right? Hey, pays as agreed. But as we all know, that a positive account can count 50 points for you or only 5 points for you and still say current, still say paid as agreed. So the scoring process is different than the credit reporting process. All right, so next is that current was late. And was late, it depends. We're going to be talking about this in a moment, but how late it was is a significant contributor to your fundability. And we'll cover that in a second. But as long as we've brought it current, think of late, think of derogatory or negative notations as getting a speeding ticket and getting a plea in abeyance. A plea in abeyance basically says, as long as you don't do it again, this is not going to count against you pretty soon. It'll count 30, 60, 90, but after 24 months, it counts less against you. And after 48 months, it counts less. We'll discuss that in a moment. But just think of being late as plea in abeyance. As long as you don't do it again, then the negative drag is going to lessen. Bad news is if you do get another late, then you get the old late added back on, just like the plea in abeyance. So that's an important distinction between those. Then, of course, for some of you, we're not caught back up. We're still late, and those notations will be 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, or 180. Different creditors go out different lengths of time in reporting you late before it goes to internal collections or before it goes to charge off, etc. Internal collections can go as soon as 30 days. American Express is notorious for giving out collection calls if you're 15 days late on your payment, not 30 days late and get a bad notation. It's in collections within 15 days. So internal collections can occur 30 days out, 60 or 90 days out. That internal collections, the next level is being charged off. So a charge off occurs once an account has not received payment, usually never less than 90 days, but it can be as late as 180 days. So they may keep it in collections for 4 or 5 months and then finally charge it off, if they charge it off, at 180 days. Now, let's get serious about charge-offs. A number of you have had experiences with this, and I'm going to show you kind of what we're up against. First and foremost, it can't be charged off by a creditor and be collected internally. Why? The reason is because if it's charged off, the word charge off means it's been charged off against the creditor's taxes. That means they're writing it off as a loss. You borrowed $5,000. You didn't pay your $5,000 back. They lost $5,000, and so they write it off. That's what a charge off means. If they're trying to collect it internally and it's charged off, that's against the law. You cannot try to collect a debt that is in charged off mode. So it can't be charged off and collected internally within the creditor. Okay, but you can have a charge off and get a 1099 tax form sent to you, because if they gave you $5,000 and you received and spent that $5,000 and then didn't pay that $5,000 back, that's income for you. And they have the right to be able to send you a 1099 miscellaneous tax form for $5,000 of income, and you have to claim it on your taxes. It was notorious back in 2008 through 2010, 2011. They were, all the banks who were getting for their foreclosures, short sales and all that, they were writing it off, and then to be spiteful, because they already get the write-off. You don't have to do a 1099 miscellaneous form to claim the write-off, but they would send a write-off to the borrower saying, yeah, you owe $280,000 to add to your income on your tax return. But they do have the right to send 1099 form for any monies they did not receive from you. So if they gave you $5,000 and you only spent $2,500, they can give you a $2,500 1099 for you to add towards your income on your taxes. All right. Now, the next one is you can't be charged off and late, especially rolling late. Now, this is what I mean. And some of you have had this, and they're not necessarily easy to fix, but we've never not been able to fix it. All right. So first of all, a charge off. Here's a perfect example of an account that says it's been charged off. Notice across the status, all three of them say charged off, or unpaid balance reported as a loss by credit grantor. So Experian has to use way more words than the word charge off, right? Well, notice though that up under condition, Equifax and Experian show it as still open, because if it's late, it's still open. If it's charged off, it has to be closed. So we have a discrepancy there. And then notice that down in the 90 days plus, those are what we call rolling lates. That means every month, somewhere in their records, they're showing it not as charged off at Experian and Equifax, but TransUnion got it right. It's closed at TransUnion. It's charged off at bad debt, but it's showing as a rolling late inside of Experian and Equifax. We have to correct this, because when we correct this, that rolling late, notice one is in July, one is in May. That's within, as of today, that is within 3 months. That means you have a brand new 30 or 90 day late. And as we'll discuss in a minute, a serious collection is defined as anything that is 90 days or more. A serious collection, or excuse me, a serious delinquency is 90 days or more. Here we've got repetitive 90-day lates, month after month after month. It goes July, June, May, April, March. That is a rolling late, and it is horribly bad juju. So we want to make sure that we correct this so that it looks exactly like TransUnion, or your scores will never, ever grow, because that rolling late continues to give brand new, fresh, derogatory accounts, and the newest ones count against you the most. All right, now let's look at, so once we go from charge off, let's go to what happens next. An item, an account can be sold to an external third-party collection agency. Now, this is external to the original lender. Now, it can be sold to collections at 90 days, 120, 150, 180. Rarely have I ever seen a collection be sold after 6 months. If it's not within that 180 days, it's usually dead in some file or on some drive, and it is not being it's not part of any of the collection activities that have been sold to external third parties. Okay, after collections, the next level of degradation, or the next level of failure, it goes to a public record, because a lawsuit is filed attempting to collect this debt. All right, now let's take a look at these, and we'll cover each one of these in greater detail. The negative indicator is a serious delinquency is anything that is 90 days or more late. So you dodge a bullet if it's only 30 days late or only 60 days late, but you only get once. Remember the plea in abeyance. If you have a 30-day late, or that negative 30 days late is going to age, and you're going to recuperate the points. The problem is that if you get another 30-day late, now you're at technically 60 days late aggregated. And if you do it a third time, and this is over any 7-year period, even a third time, now you're at 90 days late, and it's counting as a serious delinquency. Okay, 130, 160, 190. They can accumulate 3 30s is a 90, 2 30s, a 30 and a 60 is a 90. And remember, that's how FICO scores it. FICO scoring is different than credit reporting. You and I think, oh, I had a 30-day late once a year for the last 3 years, no big deal. FICO scores that as a 90. Okay, and we'll give it the most recent date. It's just like plea in abeyance. It's just like plea in abeyance. All right, now the other negative indicator on this is that a trade line will remain on your credit report. A credit account, revolving or installment, will remain on your account 7 years plus 6 months from the date of last delinquency. I just watched a video because I'm always looking for people who know more than I do. You guys should be the same way. I never want to be the smartest person in the room because then there's nowhere to go. I want to learn as much as possible. So I'm Googling different people on in preparing for this just to see what else is out there. And I got to tell you, I hate to say it, but I didn't find anything that where they know more yet than I do. And that's kind of sad. Here's the problem. Everybody, all the videos that I watched said that it's only 7 years and it's from the date of last activity. Not true, guys. It is not true. The statute says that it's 7 years and 6 months from the date of the last delinquency that led to the charge-off or collection. Let's look at what that means. So here's our payment timeline. You guys are aware of this from my FICO credit reports, right? So we have a delinquency. There it is. January 1st of 2013 says, I was delinquent, okay? But then we start making payments again, and we make another 9 payments in a row. We think we're awesome. But then we have another delinquency, but this delinquency leads ultimately to the charge-off. This client just couldn't do it anymore. It goes to collections, charge-off, etc. All right. Well, when's the terminus date? Meaning, when is the deletion date that this would fall off if we didn't get involved? Terminus date is 7 years plus 6 months from the date of last delinquency. So if you take this, November of 2013 and you add 90 months, you end up at May of 2021. That is when the statute says it must be deleted. Good news is all 3 of the credit bureaus are a little more generous. Sometimes they only calculate a full 7 years. They don't include the 6 months, and that 6 months is from, or that 7 years starts from the date of last delinquency. But the statute says, guys, 7 years plus 6 months from the date of last delinquency that led to the charge-off. All right. Now let's look at another function of the negative indicators. The score recovery period is that you get back. Now remember, every number that we're doing in here, I'm doing my little caveat. All right. I'm doing my little disclaimer. Everything is on a scale. FICO is on a scale. All the credit score measurements, all the metrics, all of the underwriting metrics are on scale. So I'm using estimates based on generalities. But given certain circumstances, the vast majority of you will find that 40% of the negative drawdown that you had as a result of a negative account will pop back after 24 months. And 30% more points will be added back for a total of 70% of the lost points will come back after 48 months. That is the FICO credit score recovery period. And I actually have FICO documents on all of these numbers, right? When we were back there last year, these are one of the questions that we asked to be confirmed. And we got total confirmation that there was a graduated recovery of the points over time, 24 and 48 months. All right. Now let's look at what the point loss metrics are. All right. Now this is really powerful because this is all credit accounts, open, closed, everything. So the total negative months that you had, 30, 60, 90, whatever it is, from different accounts, just 30. If you went 30 days late on 3 accounts, that is 90 days, all right? So it's total of 3 months. Total negative months divided by total positive months equals the point loss quotient. That means the more positive months you have, the less negative impact you're going to have when you have a 30-day late, a 60-day late. If you have 360 positive months you've paid on all of your accounts, and then you have 130, you're going to have let's say it goes down X, right? 30 points, 40 points. But if you have 1,000 positive months, and trust me, many of you clients have 1,000 because it's the number of accounts times the age, right? So you have 10 or 15 open accounts, and that includes your old mortgages that you had for 5 years each. Now that's 60 months all by itself. So you 5 mortgages at 5 years, 60 months is 300 months. Okay. So let's say you have 1,000 positive months. If you have that same 30-day late, it's not going to hit you as hard because you've proven that you can pay all of these positive months for all of these trade lines over time, and now you happen to have a 30. Now it doubles at 60 and at 2 negative accounts or negative 30 days, and it doubles again at 90 days. So that if you have these negative drawdown, it's logarithmic. You're going to start taking a hit faster and faster. So let me show you now what it means what the point loss schedule looks like. Let's say an account is counting 100 points towards you. Now these guys, these are just estimates. These could be twice these numbers, and they could be half these numbers. But where let's say an account is worth 100 points. If you go late 30 days once, you're gonna, let's say you take a 50-point hit, right? Well, you go to 60 days late, it just gets worse, right? This is a straight line to horrible. You're going to lose another 10 points. But once you hit a late 90, you're going to get, it actually goes up because that means you have a serious delinquency. Now, by definition of FICO, it goes from late 90, let's say it gets charged off, is another 20 points. And then it's sold to collection, and the collection agency files that, you get another 20-point loss, and then it turns into a public record, a judgment. It turns into a judgment, and you receive another 30 points. If this happens over the course of 6 months, guys, because 30, 60, 90, let's say 120, 150, and 160, within 6 months, you've lost approximately, in this model, 150 points. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about a client that when you know the rules of the game, you can win the game, right? Well, so let's go back to that original scenario. Account is worth 100 points. He came to me and he said, Merill, I was arrested for controlled substances, and I am going to jail for a long time. What do I do? And I coached him on the process of this degradation process, right? When you go through that entire process, you're accumulating points. It is an aggregation of points. See what I'm saying? Well, when I told him that I told him that if you called up your creditors and say, this is what has happened, I need to, will you just please charge this off? You're not going to be able to collect anything from me. No point in getting a judgment, none of this stuff. Why can you just charge this off? And most of the creditors agreed because they would be wasting time and money. And so guess what? He had a total point loss of 20 points for those accounts. So instead of ending up in the high 500s, he ended up, because he was in the 750s, 760s, he ended up with a 670 to a 680 credit score with every single account being charged off. So if you know the rules of the game, you can play the game to win, guys, because the degradation of his accounts didn't go through the domino effect of collecting points for every domino that fell. He only got the charge-off points because they went into their computer and clicked the charge-off button. That's the kind of the summary or the in-depth of the life of a trade line going from a positive to a negative charged off account.
Thank you for listening to the Get Fundable podcast. Please leave comments because Merill would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit getfundable.com to read our blog, get important links, join our community, and much, much more, like ordering Merill's tell-all book that is changing the world, The New F Word. And you gotta tell your friends about this podcast because we want them to get fundable too.